Right now, China and Japan are in a very tense situation, and what happens next between these countries can change everything. A few months ago, everything was going great and relations between Japan and China were improving, but after Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, took power, everything has changed. Now some people are saying that China and Japan can even go to war with each other over Taiwan. So let's find out what is going on between China and Japan and what happens next. A few days ago, Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi won a very important election by a landslide. Takaichi's party, the Liberal Democrat Party, has won nearly 352 of 465 seats in Japan's House of Representatives. This is the biggest election win in Japan's recent electoral history. But her recent electoral win is a very bad news for Xi Jinping, the leader of China. Why? Because she is a very conservative and nationalistic person. Sanae Takaichi is ultra-conservative and very nationalistic. Before this election, Trump endorsed Takaichi. As you can see here, they both agree on a lot of issues, and Trump has called Takaichi a strong, powerful and a wise leader. Takaichi is also Japan's first female prime minister, and she was mentored by Japan's previous prime minister Shinzo Abe himself. The predecessors of Takaichi, who were also the leaders of Liberal Democratic Party, were very unpopular because of corruption scandals and inflation. Takaichi is a very popular person, and her approval rating has remained around 70%. This is a very big number. In many developed nations, it is difficult for their political leaders to have an approval rating of above 50%, but her approval rating being more than 70% was a very great news for her and played a major role in her electoral success. Takaichi got a lot of support in Japan by focusing on her nationalist policies. Takaichi has planned to increase Japan's military budget and increase arms sales to other countries. If Takaichi actually acts on this policy, then it will prove to be very difficult for her because Japan is going through a debt crisis. Japan's debt is nearly one of the largest in the world. Japan's debt to GDP ratio remains above 200%. For comparison, China's debt to GDP ratio is 90% and America's ratio is 125%. Now it is very easy to spread nationalist rhetoric and talking big game about increasing military spending, but actually doing this will be difficult. Japan's fertility rate is very low. Japan has a lot of old people, and according to some economists, Japan needs more younger immigrants who can work in Japan. But Takaichi has taken a very tough position on immigration and foreign labor. Takaichi has pushed for tougher policies on immigration and foreigners. Takaichi opposes gay marriage, and Takaichi has promised a lot of government spending. Despite Japan being in a debt crisis, Takaichi has promised more spending, and Takaichi has also promised to cut consumption tax. Now in normal situations, cutting stuff like consumption tax can help people who are facing high inflation and high living costs. But in Japan's case, given that Japan's debt is so high, Japan has to increase revenue sources, and that means Japan has to increase taxes on some people. Now Takaichi is a very bad news for China and Xi Jinping. Takaichi is nationalist, Takaichi is a staunch ally of President Donald Trump, and Takaichi has also taken a very anti-China position on Taiwan. Last November, Takaichi made some very controversial remarks regarding Taiwan, and this caused a huge controversy between Japan and China. Last November, Takaichi suggested a possible Japanese involvement if China ever decides to take military action on Taiwan. Taiwan has not been part of China for the past few decades, but China claims that Taiwan is part of China, and in future Taiwan will be a part of China. After losing World War II, Japan never really had a strong military. So for countries like China and Russia, despite Japan being a great economical power, Japan never really posed any security threat for countries like China and Russia. But now it can change if Japan becomes a military power, and given that Japan has a very strong alliance with United States, managing Japan can be a very difficult task for China, especially given that China does not have good relations with other countries in this region like Philippines and Taiwan. If China takes any military action on Taiwan in future, if countries like Japan and United States gets involved in defending Taiwan, China can face a lot of difficulties and China can also suffer a lot of losses. Right now, Japan is facing a lot of economic problems. As I said before, Japan's debt is very high. Japan has an aging population. Japan also has high inflation. For many Japanese people, wages are not keeping up with inflation. And before Takaichi took power, Japan was trying to establish some friendly diplomatic relations with China. And relations between Japan and China were going somewhat well. So in my opinion, right now there is no need to antagonize China and trying to become a military power when Japan is facing so many economic issues. Japan should focus on its economic issues, not on Taiwan and China, until unless China starts doing war crimes in countries like Taiwan, like Japan's staunch ally United States does in many other countries. Takaichi has also hinted that she would visit Tokyo's Yasukuni Shrine, where many Japanese war criminals are honored. Takaichi used to be a regular at this shrine, but after taking office, Takaichi has avoided praying at this shrine. Many Japanese war criminals who had committed atrocities in countries like China and Korea near World War II are honored at Yasukuni Shrine. And if Takaichi goes to that shrine, China and South Korea would be very angry and see it as a sign of Japan moving towards its previous nationalistic ambitions, which were shown in World War II, where Japan allied with fascist countries like Germany and Italy. Takaichi became Japan's prime minister last October, but in November, she caused a huge controversy between China and Japan on the issue of Taiwan. On November 7, Takaichi, who has been a long-time supporter of Taiwan, said that if China takes military action on Japan, then it could cause a Japanese military response. Now, Takaichi's predecessors never engaged in this kind of language. They never suggested that Japan would help Taiwan militarily if China takes action. After this, China's foreign and defense ministries immediately demanded that Takaichi retracts her statements. But this situation escalated even more, but this time from China's side, because China's Consul General in Japanese city of Osaka a day later criticized the comments made by Takaichi and made a post on X saying they had no choice but to weep off that dirty neck that has been hurled at them without hesitation. Now this threat made by Consul General caused a lot of controversy in Japan, so he had to delete this post. After this post, Japan's chief cabinet secretary said that this Consul General's message was extremely inappropriate and demanded response from China. After this, on November 14, China's foreign minister summoned Japan's ambassador to China and warned that Japan will face a crushing defeat if Japan interfered with China and Taiwan. After that, Japan's foreign ministry summoned the Chinese ambassador because of that controversial Consul General post. Although China demanded that Takaichi should retract her comments about Taiwan, Takaichi did not do this, but Takaichi said that in future she would avoid talking about specific scenarios. Japan's previous Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, was a very good news for China. Ishiba pursued a very pragmatic approach towards diplomatic relations with China. But instead of following the path of Shigeru Ishiba, Takaichi chose the exact opposite route. And this caused a lot of problem for Japan. After this, on November 14, China issued a no-travel advisory for Japan. Every year, around 8 million Chinese tourists go to Japan. These tourists are a source of economic growth for Japan. But if China stops the flow of these tourists, it would be a bad news for Japan. China is also the biggest trade partner for Japan. Japan imports a lot of machinery, electronics, and raw materials from China. Instead of pursuing a better economic relation, a better diplomatic relation with China, Takaichi chose to be antagonistic towards China. Now this has kind of improved Takaichi's popularity. Standing up to China has increased Takaichi's popularity in Japan. But for Japan's economy and Japan's security, China is a very important nation for Japan. If Takaichi ruins Japan-China relations in future, Japan can suffer a lot. So Takaichi's policies in regards to China have not been very wise. After Takaichi announced her military spending plans, China has raised concerns and voiced opposition to Japan's military plans. After the controversy between Japan and China cooled down a little bit, China has still placed restrictions on exports of dual-use items intended for Japan's military. China has vowed closer screening of rare earth exports. China has placed travel and study warnings to Chinese citizens. China has also suspended many Japanese seafood imports. Takaichi's recent massive electoral win can further deteriorate relations between Japan and China. If relations between Japan and China deteriorates even further, then Japan would really need support of other countries like United States of America. But if instead of helping Japan, Trump focuses on improving ties with China, then this deterioration of relations between Japan and China would prove to be even more problematic for Takaichi. If Japan acts on Takaichi's military plans even further, then other countries like Russia and North Korea can also act against Japan. So then Japan would be in an even worse situation. So only time will tell if Takaichi will take a more pragmatic approach towards China in future, or if Takaichi will act on her military plans and deteriorate relations with countries like China and Russia. If you found this video interesting, then make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and thanks for watching.